Imagine for a moment that you lived in the days of Moses, about 3,000 years ago. If you would have walked in the most ancient temples of that day, you probably would have seen some sort of torches or candles to give a little bit of light. There would have been an altar there to make sacrifices on. But what your eye would have been drawn to would have been some sort of statue. It may have been made out of wood or stone or even silver or gold, but it was a statue of the God who was worshipped there. That statue was the image of that God. And the idea, of course, was that when you looked at that image, you had some idea of what that God, supposed God, was supposed to be like. Well, of course, there's only one true and living God. And when this God made the heavens and the earth, he didn't take silver or gold. He himself took dust. And from the dust of the earth, God made man in his image. But man was not intended to be some sort of dumb, lifeless statue standing on a shelf. After God made man, God breathed into him the breath of life, and man became alive. You see, the whole world was intended to be the temple of God, and God made human beings, male and female, to be his living images. Even though God doesn't have a physical body, you should have been able to look at people and know something of what God is like. In the relationships that people had with each other and with the world, they were to image the love of God, his faithfulness, his kindness, his justice. Well, Adam and Eve weren't just meant to be on display, but God gave them a job to do. They were to be fruitful and multiply so that the whole world could be filled with the image of God. And as God's representatives in the world, they were to reign over the earth, to be God's faithful stewards. There are little statements early in the book of Genesis that can be easy to miss. One of the sentences mentions a land where there is good gold to be found. Another one mentions the name of the first musician. Well, what was going on there? What can you do with gold? I guess you can save it and spend it. But you can also take gold and make beautiful things. Musicians can compose wonderful songs. And you see what was going on. God intended for people to faithfully use their talents and the resources of the earth to create stunning architecture, to design beautiful gardens, to compose glorious music, to make this world a beautiful, glorious place, to make it a fitting temple for God to fill with his presence. We can say that God made human beings to live in communion with him and with each other, and to be priests and kings. As priests, we could behold the glory of God. We could know him. We could receive his life, his love, his blessings. And then we could thankfully offer those blessings and our praise and ourselves back to God in worship. And we were made to be a royal people, kings and queens, who would faithfully exercise dominion over the earth, who would govern it in ways that were pleasing to God. Well, this was quite a calling and quite a plan. And it is a plan that God has never given up on. How it turned out, we'll begin to explore in the next session.